bit here. Yep, it is about that time. That's my guy right there. Are we here? Dang it. I want to hide them. See them. What's up? What is up, Mr. Bone? Let's see. I should. There we go. That should be a little better. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see. Remove my juicy juice here. Alex's jar of distillate and short path isolated terpenes. Dialing in a new technique, which means another new or yet another process to shoot a tutorial for. Let me get let's get everybody let's get up to snuff here. So being that this is 710 opinions, where we of course answer questions asked to me by my wonderful and beautiful patrons, um, I would like to take a quick second to say the Sunday morning check-in video, which was supposed to, in order of uploading, was supposed to be third. The odds and ends part one video actually crashed during its first uploading, so it has to, because the another video that we have on Patreon, or uploading to Patreon, or publishing to Patreon today, is Let's Build a Diamond Miner. So with Let's Build a Diamond Miner, odds and ends part one, and the Sunday morning check-in video, which is basically me just a quick, it's me just checking in with Patreon, letting you on for the week, what I've been editing, what I've been working on, etc. Anyway, that was supposed to go live or be published right after the two videos of content were published. Anyway, the Let's Build a Diamond Miner, as I last check had about 28 minutes left, and I have had to wait for the odds and ends part one because it's a little bit longer. But I hope you guys, I hope those of you over on Patreon, number one, get a little something out of it. And then number two, those of you that are not on Patreon, use this odds and ends series to come over and check out what I got going on over there. I mean, obviously these, you'll see if you watch the first video, which the odds and ends series, if it's not clear by now, the odds and ends series is open to anyone. It's only going to be on Patreon. I'm not opening it up to YouTube. You have to watch it on YouTube through the Patreon website, but you don't have to pay for it. And each video that I add to that series is going to be open to anyone. So, having said that, I hope some of you, if nothing else, maybe get something out of that series. And you know, and hopefully you see what kind of what we're going over, what we're doing, and then of course how, or sorry, what we're going over, what we're doing, what kind of material we're covering, and then what you might hope to see in some of the more full-length tutorials or fuller-length content, and specifically the Patreon only live streams, which we have one more live stream to do through Patreon that will be open to anyone, and anyone can sign in to see it. Haven't scheduled it yet or anything, but the main thing is that it will remain open and anyone can watch it after the fact, just to also get a kind of an idea of what's going on in our Patreon only live streams. You do have to go over to the patreon.com to watch that. That is, I don't know what you call it. By keeping, it's not like restricted or any, but it's like private content, I guess. So by posting that there, I'm able to not get to not get reported for taking medication that I'm prescribed, and also to not get reported for sharing the successes I've had with taking this medication. more importantly than even than both of those two, sharing how to make your own medication or your own extract. It's you know, if you come on over to Patreon, I can shoot straight with you. Here on YouTube, we obviously have to be a little guarded, as Disney and Marvel need to be able to advertise on my videos, otherwise I get demonetized again, which for the fourth time now, third time demonetized, fourth time denied, or denied eligibility. So we'll see what happens. As long as we can, as long as I can keep growing the Patreon, then we should be okay. Not sure what's going on here or why I don't have enough Wi-Fi to even. Let's see, am I on the right network? Carts of Farts. Yep, that's my network. Come on, man. Well, anyway, what you call it, screen here is just a wheel spinning. I can't even see the live stream. Can't see whether or not you guys can see me. None of it. And I'm a little upset about it. There we go. Ooh, I'm fuzzy. What up, Mr. Bone? You know what it is. Mr. Bone, the only one getting that lemon slushy. Shout out to you. Oh, Dabo77. Oh, yeah, let's go. And Hugh Eaton. What's up with you, bro? Happy Stash. Dirty the Grower. What's up, my homie? Super Booth live rosin. I'm going in on a little live rosin myself. We got Strapaya, great cream cake, an OG Kush cut that is very nice, gassy, and some rainbow belts, because, you know, if you don't have rainbow belts 2.0, then do you really have any hash rosin in 2022, I should say. That's an old strain. But anyway, hello, Donna. I am doing well, and I hope you're doing well, too. And Mr. Bone, glad to see you here, man. Let's jump right into it with a question from the Wolfman. From Kyle the Wolfman. And this is going to be a detailed one, so we're gonna break this into a few. But I'm gonna go ahead and read what Kyle had planned for the weekend, and then we'll kind of break it down, you know, bit by bit, without taking too long, as we do have to keep this somewhat watchable. All right. So Kyle says he's going to be making some crumble for a fellow grower, and he's been talking to them and showing them his work. They're excited to work with him. I assume anybody that starts to work with me that starts with a 10-pound contract is usually excited to work with me. So I'm very happy for you, Kyle, and I'm very happy that any of the information that I might have been able to share with you might have led to this, and that's me assuming a lot, because we both know you could have done this on your own. You certainly could have done it without me, but the fact that you chose me is I appreciate it, and I'm proud of you, man. So they brought him 10 pounds, and they want him to crumble it up. It's all older material. Some of it's all old, lower nug BS, but BS. But you can see. But as with a lot of the older material, I get to extract, or I'm asked to extract. He says that the trichromes are definitely there. You can see, and the lowers are dense. AF. He will be. He says my temp will be dry ice temp. That's so cool, man. Because really, it is what it is, right, guys? Like whatever solvent you're going to use, whether it's isopropyl or ethanol or acetone to hit that dry ice and get it a little bit colder, or if you're just packing the dry ice and not using a solvent, which of course is saving you money because your dry ice is sublimating a lot slower, but it's not getting as cold, especially not anywhere near as cold as it'll get with acetone. But what he means by that is essentially things will be submerged in dry ice, buried in dry ice, as cold as it can be. If I remember correctly, he's near where I am geographically, Michigan, North Midwest area. But anyway, so his temp will be dry ice temp, which is typically negative 40 with ethanol. And you can get it a little colder than that with a little more ethanol. And with the acetone, you can get it, depending on the amount of dry ice you have and the amount of acetone you have to just essentially throw away. Because God, the acetone sometimes evaporates before your dry ice is all the way sublimated. With ethanol, you always have liquid. Like with anything you're using dry ice in, with ethanol, there's liquid in there for days and weeks. I mean, it just evaporates much slower. So having said that, depending on the solvent that he's using, we're into negative temps for sure, somewhere between negative 20, and if he's going to go hardcore with dry ice and acetone, he can even approach negative 60, which is well below supercritical, and we're getting to the point that cold where it's possible to even leave behind cannabinoids. The whole purpose of getting or running with solvent this cold. Excuse me, I gotta check and see, make sure I'm not just talking into a dead phone here. All right, there we go. Let's see. There we are. The whole purpose in running your closed loop or your butane extraction with the solvent that cold, of course, is to leave behind as much lipid content as possible. And then if you have a dewaxing column, then you, of course, are sending that oil-rich butane solution into a column that is empty and is chilled with dry ice in a sleeve or however. And you let it sit in that column. He is going to be operating at dry ice temp with about a 5 psa nitrogen push and psi nitrogen push, which means that he's using nitrogen as his inert gas, because when you cool your butane or your solvent down with dry ice to that temperature, there's no pressure. Typically, when you get that cold, it starts to actually fold in on itself and it'll get under a vacuum, just sitting there on the floor. So he's going to use 5 psi of nitrogen, which that's amazing that you have the patience to do that, because I clamp everything down and I do pressure tests and vacuum tests, etc. for everything for way higher levels before running it, of course, but I generally run anywhere between 55 and 105 psi with nitrogen through my system. Now, that's because when I'm running older material like this, you're remediating, so I have some filtration media to get through, but also, I don't have time. I gotta go fast. We gotta get this extraction done so that I can get into this recovery and get this recovery done, and so that I can get on to the next one. But anyway, he's going with a 5 psi nitrogen push and about a 30 to 45 minute soak in the dewax column, which is, well, you're making some potent oil, some very potent crumble, and it's not just lipid content that you pull out in that dewax column. There's other wax, paraffin-like biological material. You're going to pull along with some of your lipid content a little color, a little chlorophyll, a little some of your undesirables before even getting near your filtration media. And then, of course, he says he's going to use CRX, which is a filtration media from the company Media Bros or Lunatech, and it's a great product. I will say this, with older dry material, I would more than likely be using CRY. CRX is typically what I use for fresh frozen material when the gardeners or people that harvest the material for fresh frozen, which is essentially just bucking it and vacuum sealing it and freezing it. This is often thought to be a thing that you can just skimp and you can cut corners on. When you do that and you cut corners and you include a bunch of water leaf and stem, etc., inside of these vacuum bags of fresh frozen material, then rather than going through and trying to remove that material and having the biomass thaw out, which it definitely will unless I can do it in a room that's negative 20 degrees, and if I don't die in there, was the extraction even worth it? Anyway, to keep from having to do that, I can use a filtration media like CRX that's very, very, very gentle and has a very, it's very granulated, not very powdery, so it's, you don't need a lot of pressure behind it for it to flow fast. At 5 psi, I'm sure the extraction runs at a typical speed, which is why I run 55 to 100 so that I can do anywhere from 10 to 20 times the speed that it would naturally occur, depending on how tight I pack my material, how much filtration media I'm using, how much material I'm running. All these are variables that are very much dependent. Anyway, he gets saying that he's getting about 1/4 of a gallon per minute flow through the CRX, and that's great actually. So that's fast. That's must obviously be using an ideal size material column and an ideal size filtration column. Sometimes I see people using like a 12 or an 18-inch 2 or 3-inch filtration media column, which is you use what you got to use. I do. If my bandwidth would stop fucking around here, pardon me, messing around, you guys would get to see the diamond miner video, and that's those of you on Patreon. My patrons will get to see the diamond miner video, and that's a perfect example of using what you have available to you in the lab to get done what you are being asked to do. Not always as straightforward as we can make it look in a YouTube video. But anyway, also, so that's the amount of flow is getting through a CRX, which is great. Certainly, I understand why he's not using any more nitrogen than he is. If you're getting that fast of flow, that's beautiful. I run. See, I imagine he's doing smaller runs. So I imagine he's running maybe 10 pounds of gas, let's say, or maybe 16, 8, and he says 8 to 1 tame to material ratio. So I'm assuming maybe a 2-pound run, 16 pounds of gas, or maybe a 1.5-pound run, 12 pounds of gas. Either way, this is not 12 pounds of gas means that we're well on just over 45 minutes for the extraction to complete. And again, Kyle is doing this, obviously, as he mentioned, this Friday or Saturday. So when you're doing it in a space that's for leisure or for fun, you're not counting the minutes that it takes for your extraction to finish. So who cares? That's great to get the extraction done within an hour. And I mean, typically you get things set up so that they're safe, and then you let it go to the point that the extraction will finish, and you come back. If you have other things to do in the lab, you work on those and you check your closed loop as it's going. But when I don't, I set up my extractions, my closed loop extractions, get the dry ice going for my injection coil, etc., everything. I just get everything on its way into the collection vessel, and that's when I go get supplies. It's one of the safest processes that I do in my lab, just because it's almost all stainless steel, and if it's not solid stainless steel, it's braided stainless steel with the vacuum or the lines, the fluid lines, gas lines, vacuum lines, etc. But it's one that you can kind of set it and forget it, and by that I mean for a little bit, like when you're in the middle of your collecting your main fraction in short path distillation, which we'll go over very soon on Patreon. You got a window, depending on how long you have before the end of your head or distillation head, and the beginning and end of your monocal, however long it takes for your distillate to clog up those two pieces of glassware from being heat gunned down to being essentially empty, and all of that distillate in the flask. That's your window. That's how much time. I mean, the setup I'm running right now gives me about 28 or 29 minutes in between necessary heat gunnings, if you will. So 8 to 1. Um, you know, I generally use 25 pounds of butane for each run. I run about it's a 5 pound system, but I can fit about 4 pounds in it. So by running 24 to 25 pounds of butane, I'm at about a 6 to 1 ratio, and I couldn't wait for each gallon to take 4 minutes. That would mean I'd be waiting 100 minutes for my extraction to complete, and then that's, well, I mean, that's almost 2 hours for just my extraction, and I typically try to get through an extraction and a recovery and into at least breaking down the material or the equipment for the next run. We're starting to clean what part of the system I can, etc., whatever, within 3 hours. That gives me the ability to do 2 runs and what I need to do around them in a day. But the only thing I would add to what is being said here is that along with this 8 to 1 ratio, he is saying that most of these terps are already gone. He will show his tank, of course, and he runs N butane as the flow rate, and the flow rate's a little slower than suggested on the media bro site, but that's much more important than the flow rate is your temperature. And your temperature and your ratio of solvent to biomass. So you're fine. You're doing fine. You're close enough to 10 to 1 to be totally fine. But having said that, I find that I run a lot of older material, and when I clean it up properly, it's insane how there are terpenes and flavonoid content within that biomass that is old, sure, and so it's being masked or whatever, but when you kind of, polish the turd, if you will, but sort of wipe off what's mucky and yucky, it may not be it's not going to be a live resin loud terpene profile, but there are many times that you can absolutely bring a totally dabbable product back from 6-month-old, a year old, even older flour, depending on how it was stored, of course. But as always, Kyle, appreciate your participation, your support, and an excellent question. And the next one we got is coming from Steve B, because Steve B is always coming in with these questions. Just fire with them, man. I love it. Ooh, pineapple haze caviar. What did you guys talk about in the Michigan Grow Chat? I missed it. I wasn't over here. And why does this fucking thing keep crashing on me? Okay, maybe it's not. Mrs. Bone? You're not chopped liver at all. As a matter of fact, my blind, silly butt did not notice the MRS. What is good, fam? So to anybody that doesn't know already, or if you don't know Mr. and Mrs. Bone, what are you doing? But these are my guys. These are my homies. So, Mrs. Bone, a lot is good. If my bandwidth was a little faster, I'd have a little more for Patreon to talk about right now that is already on, that's live and available on Patreon. But it's 9:30 here, so things do really tend to speed up right about now, between now and 10 p.m. So I assume by midnight my time, everything will be published. Having said that, I hope you are doing an okay job keeping it together. And by keeping it together, I mean keeping Mr. David in line, because we both know Mr. Bone can be a little ornery. talking about going in on pineapple haze caviar. Oh, that's what's up, man. You literally, the rainbow belts is hot. That's so. That's, hey, you know what? It's a perfect time. And again, I want to thank, shout out to Kyle. It's a great question. Great description of what you got going on. Gave me some great talking points to go over. And another quick little shout out before I forget. I'll bet she is the only one. But before I forget, I also want to do a quick shout out or a welcome to our newest Patreon, or sorry, our newest patron at the moment. And not only do I appreciate each and every one of you, it doesn't matter what tier level you are, whatever level of support that you're able to show is beautiful. And for those of you that come here to check out 710 opinions, just as much. Just as much. I mean, like, if you have interest in the Patron Only content, come on over. I opened up the new recruit tier, so for those of you that just want to see the Patron Only content and be a part of the Patron Only live streams, $3 a month. But if you're not in it for any amount of money, then I only appreciate you here, being here. I can only say I have nothing but appreciation for you being here and showing up for me here on YouTube. This is the series that I use to advertise these services. So anything that you see and anything that you participate in, I appreciate you. Rambo Bells 2.0. Shout out to 2021. Really, right? 30? I mean, last year for sure, but either way. Cheers. Too much water. See, it happened, and it happened again. And it happened again. Appreciate you, Bone. Appreciate you, Bone. Cheers to all of you. And it happened again. I got all the way down to she's the only one that can pull that off without, and I missed the misses. It is a full-time job. I can only imagine. I don't know why. I don't know why Sarah hasn't packed up with the girls and left. Oh shit, Dirty. I wish you could too. So Band-Aid haze. Ooh, I don't know anything about that. I'd love to know what lineage is in it, but I'm not familiar with the name Band-Aid haze. Sounds, anything that sounds gross is interesting to me. Or intriguing to me, I should say. But bruh, 10 elbows is, like I just mentioned, my system right now, which is a pretty good sized system, is advertised as a 5-pound closed loop, and you know you can't fit 5 pounds in it. I mean, I've food processed old trim before, literally like down into almost powder, and packed the shit out of it, and I got like 4 pounds and 11 or 12 ounces in it. So if you have anything that's like, even anything that's just strain specific, anything that I'm not going to break up like that, because food processing is, you lose a bunch of the trichrome material. But you know, when you're making distillate, you got to do what you got to do. But this is still something that might be fun to talk about. Hit me up, man. All right, Robert Phillips. Hello, hello. I love some cat piss, man, and cheetah piss is all over Montana right now. Does anybody like what's the deal? I'm old, so I just remember about it's 2023, so 15, 20 years ago now when cat piss was like all the rage. So what's cheetah piss? I mean, cheetah's a bigger, faster, more predatory cat. What is it? Did we cross it with Big Bud and call it? I mean, come on, you know what I mean? I hate when people do this shit. Anyway, is it SoCal and Tulsa? He said SoCal, just dropped like. All right, so for those of you like that are, I don't know, if you don't understand why I'm laughing at that, Southern California is and probably will always be one of the hottest and most dictating as far as like setting the trend for the rest of the world, not just this country, but cannabis markets. And it is what it is. You can disagree with me all you want, and you can be right, and I can be wrong. I don't give a fuck, but this is just what I think from what I've seen. And outside of that, Tulsa right now happens to be one of the current hot markets, which I don't think Tulsa has the longevity that SoCal has had, but Oklahoma seems to be fucking killing it, man. Let's do it. Nice. Where's my, what you call it? Dirty, I see you on Insta all the time, right? I'm pretty sure I do. Let's see. Damn. Okay. Oh shit, that's yeah. What's crazy is like people make the argument that like Flash makes more show up than is actually in the photograph, and that's not possible. What it does is accentuate things enough that you just have to know what you're looking at. But that looks proper, man. I'd love to run that for you. Um, hit me up. Yes. I thought for sure. Okay, so somebody has such a it's a similar name to you on Insta, but do they still have personal messaging here on YouTube? I used to have a what you call it, either like a WhatsApp or a text now number. Maybe I still have it. I don't know. But Dirty, you know what, man? I'm intrigued. So let's talk more about this. I'm, you know, I'm a one-man show, barely even trying to do this thing. So as I'm sure you can probably imagine, the cell phone that I would look up this text now or WhatsApp number is what I'm using to live stream. So I'll get back underneath this video and tag you in the comments and hit you up with a number. And of course, any one of you at any time, if you see this comment or if you hear what I'm saying, look for this comment because feel free. Message me anytime. Don't have things for sale or anything like that. Nothing illegal. But I can do my best to answer your questions. Obviously, I have a job and a family and a little bit of a life. But it's always nice to have a point of contact, right? And a lot of times I get questions through different emails and messaging apps and DMs, etc., that literally just take that I know I've been there, and so it's an issue that's keeping you kind of stuck at the moment, and it takes me 90 seconds or less in a voice to text response to to solve it. So hit me up. Hopefully I can help you. Where's my hat? Oh, we took that down. We're finishing off the rainbow belts, ladies and gentlemen. And then we're going to go back and finish up the episode with our excellent question from Stevie B. Cheers. I think I got one. Yeah. That was a decent dab. And somebody, Mr. and Mrs. Bone, you, if you're still here, you've been around. Does anybody remember what I used to cough like? Or how I used to cough? And not after a massive single breath dab like that, just after any amount of air. Quit smoking cigarettes, kids. It changes everything. And by that I mean it gives you the ability to take much bigger dabs. Like, I don't know about health advantages and stuff like that. That sounds cool, but more importantly, as soon as you stop smoking cigarettes, you can rage. That's what's up. I appreciate you, Dirty. You know what's up. Of course, Jaeger. Oh shit! And you know what's funny, Bone? Because of that being like such a thing, I don't. I almost. Jesus, there's a lot of smoke here. Or vapor. I went way hot. Um, I almost can't turn on a camera and like go live on YouTube without a towel near me because I'm like ready to be like, yeah, but it's not like I don't feel it. It is still a huge dab, but I just don't have to. I just don't have to cough like crazy. It does, man, and not just and for real. Like I don't know if that's a typo, but much better. And for the I'm basically I make BHO. I make distillate. I also make bubble hash and hash, I press hash rosin and I press flower rosin and I mechanically separate on a rosin press, etc. But those aren't things that I do that often. My lane really is making BHO. But I smoke, I almost exclusively smoke, other than the BHO that I've made, of course, hash rosin or melt even, or bubble hash. And the reason for that is just that I don't trust anybody. So yes, I smoke a lot of the all of the big dabs you ever see me taking or ever see of me anywhere on social media. Um, it's all BHO that I made. Otherwise, I would not be able to afford it. And it's definitely not a hash rosin that I bought because I would not be able to afford it. Taking that size dab. Sometimes, if you see me taking a small dab of something, then maybe. But I just, there's you can take the time at the right temperatures and with the right depth of vacuum to get butane hash oil clean and preserve a terpene profile that is very nice. Nowhere near as expressive as solventless because it just can't be, but still very nice. Or you can cut corners and hold on to a terpene profile that is very loud, but has a bunch of fucking butane behind it. Most states require that you get below 5,000? Yeah, 5,000 parts per million. Well, I had some stuff come back within the last month or so that came back at 235 parts per million, and I was pretty upset with myself. I was trying to protect the flavor of the oil as much as possible, but not at the cost of it being dirty. Having said that, there are places that you can walk around outside that the air is much more polluted or worse for you to breathe than it would be to dab that oil that came back at that 280. But it is what it is. I only smoke the BHO that I've made. Other than that, it's pretty much all solventless for me, for my diet. And that's just because that's the only way I can guarantee that I'm not going to fuck up my throat. Yo, who is Botany 420? That's what's up. Healing, love, and light. All one. Can you also talk about shadow blasting and stuff? Bro, those, so you, Jaeger, yes, and Jaeger, yes, but those are two topics that, oof. Shout out Gremlin City Wax, Houston, Texas, for any of you all down south. Check them out. Dude, those are really great talking points, but they're also very, 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 very in depth. And this series specifically is me going answering questions from patrons. So, if you're interested in having either one of those questions answered in detail or those processes gone over in detail, go over and check me out at patreon.com. I will, let's see, let me get you a link here. Come over and check me out here at patreon.com. You can access all Patron Only content and live streams as a new recruit for $3, or any tier above that, 5 or more. The next one up is $5. There are other tiers. Check it out. If you're interested, at $5 a month, that's the first tier where you can have any question, such as can you go into detail about how to blast or pour shatter and make sure that your slab forms with stability and does not nucleate or start to marbleize or crumble or sugar. That's typically what I go over, or the question I get asked most with when it comes to shatter. And it really just comes down to lack of agitation and making sure that you're only pouring, you're never scraping, and distillation is a topic that is very, very in depth, beginning with the crude extraction, whether it be butane or ethanol or whatever, but then through winterization, that filtration. I like to do a charcoal scrub, an activated charcoal scrub, and then after that, I recover the ethanol with rotovac and then distill. So, and if it's a project where I'm trying to achieve the highest potency, I distill twice, or first and second pass. So there's a lot to go over there, and I would love to go over for you, but that would take a couple episodes. So check me out over on Patreon. Let me know what you think. There's a couple things coming up that are available for anyone. You don't have to, the live streams and the first video of the odds and ends series, which is publishing now, but I'm just at the mercy of my bandwidth. That's all available to anyone you don't need to pay. That's just open, or you know, I guess open content. I don't know what it's called. You don't have to be a patron. You can see it. So Steve, killing it, man. Always killing it. And I hope you're still here. I didn't want to spoil it, but Jaeger, I hope you're still here because yeah, I can't get if I'll get lost in the YouTube comments. But morning, says Steve. Here are today's questions. When pouring from collection base to Pyrex or parchment paper, you've mentioned not to scrape. This causes nucleation. What are the downsides of this? Is this for when you want clear shatter? Also, next question. How many times do you flip? I try and flip every 24 hours for 5 days. And this is great material because I answered you, Steve, with a little text here, but I forgot. I didn't really address that last line. The flipping every day. I purge for 3 to 5 days too with shatter. It's the best way to get stable, clean shatter without having to go to a high temp. And let's walk it back. I've mentioned not scraping, not necessarily pouring into a Pyrex, because into a Pyrex you certainly can pour what you will come out of the base and scrape everything else because you're typically going to make a batter or a sugar or a Pantech diamond in sauce or it's really just a sugar sauce. But anyway, on parchment, on the other hand, you only want to pour anything that is touched. Or so if you notice when you put the spatula or dabber or whatever it is that you're using to scrape out your little vessel, as soon as you put that in, you'll notice that because of this being room temperature, it bubbles around it, right? And that's a micro agitation happening right there. If you're putting a large piece of a spatula, like a silicone spatula in there and trying to and scraping out, you see it bubbling up crazy all around it. It's basically foam, and then you end up like basically wiping that on the parchment paper, which is then a second micro agitation, which is now becoming pretty aggressive. So I don't know how much longer we can use the term micro, but essentially, if you show any of the oil that you're trying to get to lay down into an amorphous solid or a shatter, any agitation, it will nucleate some strains, some blends, some whatever, sooner than later. It may be a couple weeks, it may be a couple hours, it may be before it finishes purging. And that's what's I've demonstrated this before by showing people, like when they say like, oh, I keep having this problem, and it's the center of my slab sugar, and I'm like, well, I can see which obviously you're scraping out into it. And so we prepare 2 parchments, you pour onto one, and then after everything is done pouring, you move over to the other and scrape out, and then put them both in your oven and purge them like you would a slab of shatter. And when you're finished, one will be sugar and one will be a beautiful plate of glass. Having said that, purging or flipping every 24 hours for 5 days is a little counterintuitive, because think of it this way. Like I'm gonna, for those of you that are here with me, trying to approach this visually. This is we've zoomed in, 1,000 times. This is our slab of shatter, right? While we're on our parchment, which is down here, and this is the part that's exposed it's open in the vacuum oven, or exposed, and it's under full vacuum, which means it's being pulled on. We are pulling on the top of this and pulling down as far as we can, right? As far as we can into our slab shatter to clean as much as possible, right? So if over 5 days you flip every 24 hours, it's very conceivable that you could possibly, depending on how thick you're pouring, etc., you could possibly be working, cleaning the surface, and then you flip, and then you clean the surface, and then you flip, and you clean the surface, and you can end up sealing. This is how you end up accidentally hitting 200 or 250 ppms of butane on a test that on some oil that you typically, it'll show up, but it's 50 or less. It's so minute that but it does not even make it past the point. No solvent makes it past the point of vaporization. That's oil that's prepared for dabbing, though. If I was making anything for the preparation of edibles, it would see a lot more heat and be completely solvent free, not solventless, but solvent free. So essentially, Steve, what I'm saying is that if you're going to flip that off, then you may end up trapping a thin layer of solvent in between, microscopic. Think about this. These are microscopic layers, and if you take a piece of shatter and look at it on its side, you have how many micrometers? I mean, 1,000, 2, So the point of the matter is, what we can do to clean our oil as best as possible, in my personal opinion, is decide what amount of time we're going to dedicate to it, which in your case, we've said 5 days here. So for me, I personally would do I would do 2 days. For a 5-day thing, I would do 2 days on one side. And by that I mean, this is like the first, I pour into a parchment that has, folds, and it's into a little box or whatever. So I pour into that, and it purges over the course of the day, or sits in the oven over the course of the day, or whatever, to the point that I can fold it down and then turn it over and sit it flat on a piece of parchment paper. Or I pour it at the end of the day, and it sits overnight in the oven, and I do that in the morning. At that point, we are starting this time period that I'm talking about. So at that point, after pushing the sidewalls down onto it and putting it over onto a flat piece of parchment paper, if I was going to purge for 5 days, I would do 2 days without flipping it, it's 2 days as is, and then flip it and do 2 days as is, and then honestly, I at that point would really just pull a full, flip it again and pull a full vacuum, and then flip it again and pull a full vacuum, and that's it. And so that 5th day really wouldn't even be a full day. But just because of the idea of trapping that microscopic layer, I try and encourage people to flip less, but absolutely give both sides enough time in and under vacuum to achieve a clean slab. All right, guys, we pretty much got to wrap it up. I don't know how far behind I am here, but yeah, of course, yeah, you're very welcome, brother. Ballpark. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Jaeger. Let's see, any tips on being post vacuum? Oh yeah, absolutely. I made so the vacuum chambers, man. A sunbeam heating pad can be amazing, because even though when you put it on low and it's at like 115 or 120 or 25 degrees or whatever, and you're wondering, that's gonna fucking cook my trips. It would if you were laying the oil out on the heating pad, but if you put that, let's say, underneath one of these, you can see this mat, I assume, hopefully, right? It's one of these silicone mats, right? If you put one of these on top of that heating pad, and then sit your vacuum chamber on top of that, there's some transfer loss there. So by the time you check with your temperature gun, you know, get a little $8 or $10 thermometer gun, you can easily, with 20 bucks, dial in on 90 and 95 or 102 or, you know, whatever you're trying. I mean, crumble, you want to go a little warmer. Stable shatter, I like to go a little cooler, and not cooler, like, you know, 85 or 90 degrees at minimum, and perch for longer. And then that's when I was talking about flipping, etc. Every 2 days, whatever. But you can absolutely use a vacuum chamber and pump and heating pad, sunbeam heating pad. Shout out to it, man. And then a little silicone Reynolds cooking mat, because you don't need to pay more than $1.99 or 99 cents for it. Like, you don't need to get a silicone, like, I'm not going to mention any, but cannabis brand mat that is incredibly overpriced because it's for cannabis usage, which is just silly. Well, this is the second. I saw a message from from a friend, and it said it started out like this, and I don't know, and oh my God. Idle Avenue, I appreciate you. Am I the only one that says it, Idle Avenue? I don't know, I feel like. Anyway. Unknown source, no. I didn't, and I don't know what's going on. If you don't mind, can you tell me what happened? Or if you can sum it up or something. In my DMs, I've seen a number of messages that start with, did you see what happened with Goliath? Did you see what, and I am afraid to open them. Just because when that many messages at one time show up about a single topic, it's usually bad. And I don't. Oof. That's right, dude. That's awesome. Because I figured most people would look at it and think like, I'd leave. Okay, well, I guess you'd leave. I'm not saying that I'm like insecure about whether or not your Google account name is speaking on whether or not you would stick around for content of mine. Oh man. That's what I'm saying, dude. It's projection, right? It's just projection. I love it. And I figured so. Through, because I'm broken, I have started to be able to see my own projection. With that said, I still do it. But that's the only reason why I might be able to look through and see what's actually happening here. Also, I feel like if I don't know, I would use some capitalization if it was I'd leave, but I don't know. Idle Avenue. Shout out to you. Idle Avenue, spot, dude, throw us a link, man. Throw up a link in the chat. Please do. And for those of you that see this after the fact, if you're here and if you're watching this video at this point, please look in the live chat and scroll to wherever we are and check out these links. Follow my boy. All right. Once again, I want to, I don't know if once again, on Patreon we have a few times. Let me, for here on YouTube, quick shout out to the newest patron, Ashley B. Appreciate you. Welcome to the family. And Steve B, Wolfman, Kyle, appreciate you with always keeping the questions coming. And also a quick shout out to David B and Jonas. Appreciate the support. Outside of that, just want to do a little quick link to Max. You know what's up. I appreciate you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. This is the end of episode 4 of 710 Opinions. I do hope you found some enjoyment in our conversation here, or at least me yapping at you, if we can call that a conversation. But once again, if you'd like to have a question read and answered here on 710 Opinions every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, you can follow the link in the live chat or in the video description and join the Patreon. If you're hesitant, there is some content over there that is open or accessible to anyone. You don't have to be a patron at all. And then also I've created a new recruit tier that's $3 a month, gives you access to all Patron Only content, anything that's uploaded or any tutorial, anything like that, as well as any post or live stream. But to have a question read and answered here on 710 Opinions, you just need to be a private in the 710 Army or higher, and that's only $5 a month. So I appreciate you. I love you, and I will see you much sooner than later. I love you. Check out my guy. His links are in the live chat. Check out my guy. And let's all pray for Goliath. I know we all have nothing but love for the homie. Aside from that, Jaeger, you're of course very welcome. And again, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. All right. Have a great week, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you next Sunday, 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.